I found myself reading a paragraph, and by the time I get to the end of a sentence, I might forget what it said at the beginning, and I'd have to go back and reread it. So by inserting some illustrations in between these main points, first, the illustration is going to emphasize whatever it is you're saying in the paragraph. It also gives the brain a rest, gives you an opportunity to absorb what was said in that first sentence so that you can now move on and absorb another concept as it comes at you. So it's the ability to break up the text into enjoyable nibbles instead of trying to consume the whole thing in one big bite.
Welcome to the Knowledgebase Ninjas podcast, where 𝐭𝐚𝐤𝐿 of Document 360 finds the best SaaS self-service knowledge bases in the world and then interviews their creators. Let's get started with today's episode.
Good day, everyone. Our guest today for the Knowledgebase Ninjas podcast is Dennis Dawson, staff technical writer at Ripple. So Dennis, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing great, Marie. Thank you for having me.
Great. So Dennis, I would love to hear more from you. Come on, let's hear from you now.
What would you like to know? You want me to start with my background?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I am a staff technical writer at Ripple. As we said, I've been in high-tech user support for 40 years. No, I graduated with an English degree in 1984. I got a job with an accounting firm, Arthur Young at the time. I was editing financial statements, so I was making sure that they were correct in terms of grammar and verifying the numbers back and forth. Then I found out that the typist made more money than I did. And I said, wait a second, I type. So I got to work on an old A.B. Dick word processor. And then I found out that secretaries made more than typists. I said, well, wait a second, I can also answer a phone. It made me a secretary in the management consulting group. Now, one of our clients was Apple, and they put an Apple 128K Mac on my desk alongside IBM PC. And I used both of them in my day-to-day work. I went to the first Macworld convention.
Wow.
And I saw Bill Atkinson demonstrate Mac Write, and someone else demonstrated Mac Paint, which were the only two applications on the Mac at the time. I went back to my office, and I was suddenly the Macintosh expert. And I started training people in our office. And then when the laser printer was introduced, I figured out how you could take an 11 by 17 spreadsheet and shrink it down, put it on 8.5 by 11. And believe it or not, they flew me all over the country teaching word processing centers how to do the same thing. So after that, my career was mostly getting the manual for a new piece of software before anybody else did, reading it, figuring out the practical use, and then selling other people on the idea that they should use that software.
Mm-hmm. Wow. It's amazing to hear, Dennis. That's all I can say.
It was a very different time. I wonder how people break into the technical writing field now, because at that time I was doing technical training, but then I got into technical support. I've been a product manager at times, a project manager where I was mainly paying attention to the schedule of the things that we release. But since Java's release, so for the past 25, 30 years, I've mostly been a technical writer.
Great. So I'm just going to talk about slightly different topic now. When we speak about graphics, especially from a technical writing standpoint, what comes to our mind is the screenshots and flowcharts. From your experience, ample experience, what are the other graphics that technical writers use?
Yes, well, from a very early stage, I wanted to do different things with the graphics rather than just the flowcharts. I started using whatever software was available to create animations that would enhance whatever I was trying to demonstrate.
Mhm.
So it was very primitive when I started in 1984. I used a program called Slideshow Magician, which essentially lets you stack a bunch of bitmap graphics and you would have, a transition between them, maybe a dissolve, or it would slide to the left, something along that line. But still, I was able to do some clever things with that and create a form of animation. I even used Mac Draw at the time because it was so slow to reproduce a graphic and it did it one section at a time. You could actually create, in effect, animation cells by stacking them, and you would get that animation when it would load the
Mhm.
software. So I've been pushing the envelope from the beginning. Now, of course, in Keynote, in PowerPoint, you've got some great built-in animation techniques that you can use. So one of the things I emphasize is you don't have to go get a degree in film production. You don't have to use Adobe After Effects or any very expensive high-end software. Just the tools that come to you for free. You can use Google Slides with their animations. You can do some very engaging things where you're enhancing the learning in the whatever it is you're trying to get across, and you're not distracting people from
Mhm.
what they're supposed to learn with some whiz-bang graphics. I very often find that the high-end marketing videos that people put together really look good, but they don't communicate as effectively as a simpler video, simpler animation that is tied directly into the core of what you're trying to teach.
Great. So while we are just on this topic of tools, how do you create effective graphics? And can you point on some of the common tools that could be used?
For most of the graphics that I create, I can certainly just use the shape tools that you find in PowerPoint, Keynote, or Google Slides. Those are going to be fine. Usually, when I'm creating a graphic, I will use something that's more icon-like. So even if I'm creating a horse or a person or some picture, I'll follow an iconography style
Mhm.
drawing. So I just make it out of basic shapes. If you want to introduce your own drawings into your technical documentation, I recommend you go to the children's section of the library. You can look for people like Ed Emberley or Mark Kistler. They have simple drawing techniques that are easy to reproduce on the computer, and they're very effective. Anybody can do them immediately. So you
Mhm.
don't have to rely on the bean bodies or any sort of clip art that everybody's seen before and is really cheesy. You can create your own style, your own look based on these simple guidelines that you find in the children's section. If you go to the adult section, they use all kinds of fancy words, but you're still doing the same things. So it's
Mhm.
just more fun.
And is there a one size fits all approach for representing graphics in technical writing?
Well, a key to it is definitely you need to coordinate with your design team in your company. Now, if you're your own entrepreneur and you don't have a design team, yay, you can have some fun. But even then, I would recommend that you go out and research the best ways to present your graphics. I just read the book Slideology by uh, Nancy Duarte. And
Okay.
even though I've been using slide software for 40 years, I found out that I was doing many things right and a couple of things wrong. And
Mhm.
you just add this knowledge to your quiver. But if you work with your design team, you can be sure that whatever graphics you create are in line with the brand that your company is putting forward. And that's really essential. You want to be sure that whatever you do is in sync, and it doesn't mean it has to match, but you're going to use the same color scheme. You're going to use the same tone. Some people like a lighter tone. Some people want it to be more buttoned up and professional. And what I like to say is you want to work by uh, being creative within the box. It's
Mm-hmm.
actually easier to go outside the box and do all kinds of crazy things. But if you talk with your design team and your marketing team, and you say, what is it that we're trying to do? What restrictions would you put on this? What constrictions are you going to put on me? Then once I know the rules, I can be as creative as I like within the rules and have a lot of fun, create some graphics that are really communicative and unique within the company without soiling the company's brand.
Great. Now you did help us with a couple of resources while we were talking previously. Any other documentation related resource you could point to our audiences today?
Documentation resources. I have to admit that I've been in the industry for 40 years, as I said, but I didn't attend a lot of conferences. And it's ironic because my whole career started because I attended that first, uh, the Macworld
Mm?
conference. After that, I attended conferences primarily because I was a product manager and I was sent there to speak, but I didn't uh, go to all of the sessions and I didn't interact with the customers as much as I could have. And I didn't connect with my peers, people doing the same job in other companies, etc. And that's something I definitely regret at this point because just recently I've been more active. I attended Write the Docs in 2023. I was, uh, even though I'd been doing a lot of these changes to the graphics, I didn't have a vocabulary that enabled me to explain it well to our branding team, to other people in the company. And when I attended Write the Docs 2023, I saw 𝐭𝐚𝐤𝐬𝐿 do a presentation. And she was talking about uh, you have these graphics, nobody ever sees them. Why is that? And she introduced me to the writings of Richard Mayer at
Mm?
that point, who talks about multimedia learning. And once again, there were things I was doing right, and I instinctively knew that they were absolutely correct. And there were things I was doing wrong. One of the things I love to do is write music. And I had this great background music in all of my videos. Richard Mayer says, well, you don't do that because you've got two different audio streams coming in and it distracts the learning if you're trying to listen to a voice and listen to the music. And so one of my favorite things to do was one of the worst things to do. I've cut the music out of my videos now,
Mm.
and they've greatly improved. So I learned that just by attending a
Oh,
conference, by listening to one person. If you go to a conference and you take away one nugget of something that you can apply to your job and you walk away with 100 new contacts, it's just an amazing boost to your career. So in 2023, I was a uh, audience member. In 2024, I actually came back and spoke about what I had learned the previous year and how I'd applied it.
wow, very inspiring, Dennis. Now, I know it's very hard for you, but let me ask, what is that one word that comes to your mind when you say documentation?
The word is fidelity because that encompasses a whole lot of things that I think are important in your technical writing. Of course, you want to write things that are true. You want to write things that are going to be useful, but you want to be true to the spirit of what you're trying to do. You're not just giving people a bunch of factual information. You're providing just enough information for them to do what it is they need to do so that
Mhm.
they can go home, buy candy for the baby, and have a life. And everything that I do, I keep in mind that I'm working for somebody to make it easier for them to get their job done. And if I am true to my spirit and I produce true documentation, then I know that what I'm doing is worthwhile.
Absolutely. Super. So, Dennis, my last question to you is, what is that one piece of documentation related advice you would give to a 20-year-old self?
Definitely, and I already mentioned this, attend more conferences, reach out to more people. Uh, it was amazing to me as I got more involved with conferences. And in fact, I'm stepping away from a conference right now that I'll return to, a conference that is going on in Amsterdam about learning experience design, something related to what I'm doing, but not uh, strictly a technical writing conference, as it were. As I go to visit these conferences, yes, I'm learning things, but I'm also sharing some of the wisdom that I've come across over the past 40 years. Things
Mm-hmm.
that to me are just little homilies, little uh, small bits of wisdom that I've picked up, where you say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, sorts of things. You say something like that to the right person at the right time about the right problem, and it's amazing that they will write back to you and tell you how that little nugget of wisdom is the thing that made them revise their documentation set. It's the thing that enabled them to communicate effectively to their manager what they were trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been uh, benefiting in those ways from the connections I've made at the shows, but at the same time, I'm actually helping other people. And that's a great feeling.
Absolutely. So, attend more conferences and do a lot more networking to strengthen your knowledge within the space.
Yeah, I didn't realize that there were things I knew that other people weren't aware of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it surprises me when I'm talking to people and I say, "Have you tried such and such?" And they say, "No, I never thought of it that way." And I should have been sharing that all along. So that the thing is, if you've got a great idea, that's great. But if you talk to 10 people and each of them has one great idea, you share yours, you end up with 10 that you have just swapped. So I've known for years that if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. Yeah. I've made a career out of being the dumbest guy in the room. I uh, ask the question that other people aren't willing to ask. If someone explains something to me and I don't understand it, I don't blame myself. I, in my head, blame them for giving me a poor explanation, and I ask them to say it again in different words and dumb it down for me because I'm Dennis. As the lowest common denominator, if I understand it, I can explain it to anybody.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Very well said, Dennis. Now, with this, I'm done with my questions, but please feel free to add anything more you would like to add in this podcast.
I am a huge proponent of getting more uh, illustrations into technical documentation, not just, again, the flow charts that you normally see or screenshots. Yes, those are useful, but one of the things we found in our documentation is that people were coming in and they were looking at essentially a big gray wall of text. It was
Mm-hmm.
just paragraph after paragraph of excellent, true information, but so much information was coming at you that it led to cognitive overload at that point. And I found myself reading a paragraph, and by the time I get to the end of a sentence, I might forget what it said at the beginning, and I'd have to go back and reread it. So by inserting some illustrations in between these main points, first, the illustration is going to emphasize whatever it is you're saying in the paragraph. It also gives the brain a rest, gives you an opportunity to absorb what was said in that first sentence so that you can now move on and absorb another concept as it comes at you. So it's the ability to break up the text into enjoyable nibbles instead of trying to consume the whole thing in one big bite that
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate with extended graphics.
Great. So thank you so much, Dennis, for your time. And I know we haven't picked your brain in everything, but it was wonderful talking to you on this topic particularly. And once again, appreciate all your support towards this community. And 40 years in technical writing is not something that we should take it lightly.
Yes, it goes by in a heartbeat, people. So be sure to stop and smell the roses. That's all I'll tell you.
Wonderful. So have a lovely day, Dennis, and take care.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Knowledgebase Ninjas podcast. Please head to iTunes, rate, and provide honest feedback on the podcast. See you next week.